Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance Network. Cool, mic's on. And today, it's a little late. It is close to 10 here in Houston, June 16, 2020. And I decided I wanted to do a video to do a summary, a kind of check-in on what's happened in day 5 and 6, the second week of the fluoride trial. So if you guys can hear me okay, please comment below. Thumbs up. Cool, I got some thumbs up. I have about 20 or 30 tweets that I want to go through. I've basically been live tweeting at Broze Live Free, which is my Twitter account, for the last week and a half, including today and yesterday. And I'm going to go over some of the top, I think, pieces of the puzzle. I've been posting these tweets on the YouTube channel. If you guys follow my YouTube channel or my Facebook pages, you can see the summary of it. But I'm just going to go over a little bit of the highlights, keep it short and sweet. And first off, I'll start off by letting you guys know that tomorrow is going to be the final day in the fluoride trial. This is taking place in San Francisco. I was supposed to be there in person, but obviously things are not as they should be at the moment. So the trial is taking place via Zoom, and anybody can watch. They've had hundreds of people tuned in, so that's been pretty cool. And as I said, I've just been live tweeting on everything going on. And if you haven't seen, I did do an article already on The Last American Vagabond, which basically covered week one, went over all the different pieces of testimony that came out. And honestly, there have been some pretty explosive testimony. Namely, the main thing I focused on last week was the fact that Dr. Grangen, who is he's a Danish scientist who is one of the plaintiffs, Fluoride Action Network, one of their witnesses, he testified that he was threatened whenever he released a study at Harvard about the dangers of fluoride, that he was threatened, and basically they took his name and put it on a document that he didn't really even approve of. You can read all about that and more on this article here, Fluoride Trial. Scientist says he was threatened in week one review. I'll post a link to that real quick, and then we'll get into what's going on here in week two. But before we do that, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com. This is my website. You can stay plugged in with all of my content. I try to cover a wide range of things, from some topics that typically get dismissed as conspiracies, trying to fact check or prove those claims. I also cover health issues. I try to cover spirituality and exploration of our internal and interpersonal journey. And I also try to cover, of course, politics and anarchism and philosophy and other things. So please stay plugged in by following us on Minds, following us on Hive. Join us on our Discord channel. Sign up at the text list. Check out Float. It's this little blue sailboat. You can check out float.app/conscious resistance. My videos are also on BitChute and also on Library, so you don't have to watch them on YouTube if you prefer to support elsewhere. And of course, if you want to sign up to support, you can do so at patreon.com/Derrick Broze. All right, so before we get further, let me go ahead and drop that link to you guys. So those of you who want to read about week one, and I'm thankful for your thankfulness towards my reporting. I'm glad that people actually care about what's going on with fluoride. As I've said a couple of times, this is a topic that I've been researching for quite some time, for about 10 years now, and it's definitely one of the things that has often been dismissed as conspiracy theory. So it's kind of I don't know, it's just an affirmation to see that it's getting the coverage and the treatment that it deserves by being in a federal court. So, all right, let's go on now into the tweets so I can get this done. Me and Miriam are going to watch a movie and chill. So I want to do this report, and then we're going to hang out a little bit. So this was yesterday, June 15th. And let me just bring you guys up to speed. The plaintiffs, the Fluoride Action Network, they rested their case on Friday. So yesterday and today have just been the government, the EPA, calling their witnesses to try to basically poke holes in the testimony by the plaintiffs, because there was already previously an EPA ruling that said that, the judge's ruling that said that the EPA couldn't present any evidence promoting the alleged benefits of fluoride. They could only respond. So that was pretty cool because it limited them in a big way. They didn't get to just go on there and have their experts testify all about how fluoride's supposedly the greatest, breakthrough of the 21st century or whatever, which is really what the CDC claims. So what we're about to share with you is just the testimony of the EPA's witnesses being questioned either by their own lawyers in the EPA or by Fluoride Action Network Michael Khanna. So when you see FAN Khanna, that's what it means. Fluoride Action Network's Michael Khanna. he asked Dr. Suji, which was the EPA's witness, do you agree that there is sufficient evidence of a potential association between water fluoridation and neurotoxicity? Suji says, yes, I believe the EPA and the NTP should examine the info on toxicity at fluoride and at what doses there are concerns. So this was the EPA's own witness, and she admitted that there was reason to look further. So I thought that was pretty telling. And then this one here, Fluoride Action Network, Khanna asks witness Suji about her previous work involving arsenic. Suji gives a long-winded answer, which is something that kept happening. It was kind of a little bit tense, and there's been some tense moments in the court. And Michael Khanna reminded Suji that she took an oath to tell the truth and calls to read from her deposition. The EPA objects and says Khanna needs to read her full answer because it's called impeachment testimony. When one of the witnesses says something that contradicts what they previously said in a deposition or in other statements, he'll say, hey, okay, I want to introduce impeachment testimony. And then he brings up their testimony and has them read from it and just shows for the court, for the judge, that, hey, look, this person is not being straightforward and not being honest. So Fluoride Action Network Khanna asked Judge Chen to admonish the witness, Suji, to answer the questions as she has been giving long-winded explanations but not answering. And the judge agreed with that and was like, you need to answer the questions. Then another important point, Khanna asked Dr. Suji if she stated in her deposition that she, at most, quote, skimmed the studies on fluoride. Khanna asked if she is prepared to testify on a body of work that she has at most skimmed. Judge Chin interjects, says this is overbroad, and asks him to ask the question again. And then Khanna asks if Suji is confident in testifying on fluoride's effect in the brain. Suji begins to answer. Judge admonishes for not answering. Are you prepared to give expert testimony on these studies? The judge asked. So even the judge was like, do you know why you're here? Are you willing to, do this? Can you say that you have the credibility? Khanna says, you have stated that you find the adverse effects in the McPherson study to be meaningful. Khanna moves to introduce impeaching testimony from Suji's deposition. So again, like I said, Michael Khanna is a very good attorney, whether, wherever you stand on the side of this debate, which should clearly be on the side of the evidence and the health, which is that fluoride is danger in a number of ways. But just objectively, Michael Khanna is a good attorney. He's good at what he does and good at, just following up and exposing the weaknesses and the opponent's witnesses. Khanna says, quote, we are vigorously prepared to rebut the poorly written abstract from Dr. Chang. Judge asks if Khanna has previously seen this abstract, asks the EPA lawyer, Simi Bott, why this abstract wasn't presented sooner. So what this is about is Michael Khanna basically says, hey, Judge, the defense, the EPA, the government, just introduced an abstract from an unpublished Spanish study, which hasn't been peer-reviewed, and they haven't seen the full study, so they're just going on the abstract. And this abstract was going to be discussed by their witness, Dr. Chang, who is employed by Exponent Incorporated, which I talked to you guys about previously. Exponent is basically a corporate law firm that defends chemicals like this. And as we're going to find out, this woman has a history of doing this, working with big corporations to defend dangerous chemicals. And so he was basically saying, like, this is last minute, we shouldn't allow this abstract in there. The EPA is attempting to use a brand new abstract, which has not been accepted by peer-reviewed journals. Fluoride Action Network Khanna is objecting for the plaintiffs. And EPA Simi Bott is defending the abstract being introduced last minute, which has not been peer-reviewed. Judge Chen says that in the interest of examining all the scientific data available, he will allow it. Fluoride Action Network given extra time to rebut the new abstract. So he said, okay, well, you'll have more time added to your overall time. And here's Dr. Ellen Chang, also employed by Exponent Incorporated. She has nearly 2 decades of experience in designing, conducting, and interpreting studies. And you can read her bio there. EPA lawyer Bott asks, have you conducted any studies on fluoride? Chang says no. Are you still able to speak on fluoride toxicity studies? Bott says yes. And then Judge Chen asking for clarification on studies by Dr. Chang, quote, I assume you were saying you could place some reliance on the abstract. Chang says, I would like to see the full peer-reviewed study, but given the investigators and the abstract, I support it. So it's pretty weird because can't think of very many other times where, people are so hard to talk about peer-reviewed studies, no matter what it comes to, fluoride, 5G, whatever, and the importance of that. But we're here in a court, and the government is basically just trying to prevent a non-peer-reviewed study, only the abstract. And if you know what an abstract is, guys, it's a pretty brief summary. It's not like tables and lots of information. It's just real basic. And that's what they're basing, like, hey, here's a study, and based on their abstract, they're saying X, Y, and Z, but without looking at how that study was conducted and knowing the details of it. So it's pretty weird to see the government allow that. EPA asked Dr. Chang, how do the results of the Spanish abstract change your view on fluoride neurotoxicity? Chang says it does not change her view and that there's no toxicity at the levels of community drinking water. So she is reinforcing her position, and the EPA ends questioning of her. Then, Michael Khanna began the cross-examination of Dr. Chang. He reconfirmed that Dr. Chang is not an expert witness on fluoride. Khanna asked Dr. Chang how much Exponent Incorporated pays her, and it was pretty funny. I mean, he was, and the judge was allowing it. The EPA objected. Judge Chen overruled, said, hey, if you want to, you can submit how much you get paid by them on seal to the court if you don't want to say publicly. Fluoride Action Network asked Dr. Chang how much she billed Exponent Incorporated for her work. Chang gives a long-winded answer, eventually says $149,000. Then Khanna asked witness Chang if she was paid by pesticide company Syngenta to give a presentation. Chang says that it is correct that she was retained by Syngenta to testify at an EPA committee. So Syngenta is, of course, one of the biotech companies like Monsanto, for those of you who are unaware. Fluoride Action Network Khanna asked Dr. Chang, are you aware of ever serving as an expert on an EPA advisory board? Chang says no. So again, he's trying to say, like, look, you don't even have the credentials. Khanna asks Chang if she has ever served on the plaintiff's side of chemical lawsuit. Chang says not yet. And so, I mean, he's basically saying, like, you're always defending chemical companies. You're always on the side of these chemical companies and just straight up calling her out for it. Khanna is showing a document which details the number of times EPA witness Dr. Chang has studied and defended various chemicals. The research is sponsored by Monsanto, Dow Chemical, Syngenta, CropLife, American Petroleum Institute, and I'm going to see if I can show this to you guys real quick. I have it saved. Are you guys there? Hope you're enjoying this. Again, this is Derrick Broze, the Conscious Resistance Network. I mean, I hope you guys are really taking this in and can see how crazy it is. Like, they're but this is like, working through the system, right? Like, this is trusting them that they're going to allow a court of law to really find fluoride to be, to have violating the TSCA, the Toxic Substance Control Act. If they do that, this opens the government up to all kinds of class action lawsuits and, things of that sort. So I mean, honestly, like I said, Khanna's a good attorney. They've been doing really awesome, but it's not like we know that these courts are fair and that, people don't get screwed over and these kinds of things. That we know that happens all the time. So it's hard to have any faith in that. But all right, I'm going to show you guys this. I actually took a screenshot. Don't tell anybody. I took a screenshot of what was going on in the courtroom. And this is a table that Fluoride Action Network attorney Khanna put together that shows her job history right here. So Dr. Ellen Chang's published systematic reviews of chemical hazards in humans with Exponent Incorporated. So it shows the year, the chemical that she defended, the hazard that they were trying to, basically disprove, the industry sponsor, Dow Chemical, Monsanto, 3M, Dow Chemical, Monsanto, Dow Chemical, Monsanto, CropLife America, Electric Power Research, 3M, Monsanto, Syngenta, American Chemistry Council, American Petroleum Institute. And so, yeah, I mean, look, from 2014 to 2019, this lady's worked with all these biotech chemical companies that many of you know they control the food. They're working on controlling the food population, genetic engineering, all these kinds of crazy things. This is what this woman's involved in. So, I mean, this is what the EPA is presenting, though. This is literally what the government, the U.S. government, the Trump administration, let's make that clear, is trying to put forward. A dirty scientist that's worked with Monsanto and has defended Agent Orange. This is the kind of woman that, like, I mean, you can clearly see what kind of scientist she is. This is what Dr. Grandjean, the other expert witness for the plaintiffs, testified last week, what they call her, they call them rent-a-white coats. So they know that in the industry that there are scientists that will go ahead and sell the people out for money. Khanna asks witness Chang about her systematic review of Agent Orange dioxin funded by Monsanto. Khanna asked Chang if her reviews found that there was insufficient evidence for harm. Chang carefully answers, said the conclusions were more nuanced. Then Khanna asked witness Chang if she is aware that her conclusions on Agent Orange conflict with the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. Chang says that's false. Khanna then was like, okay, let me show you the website. He busted out the Department of Veterans Affairs website, and he showed that they warn of prostate cancer from Agent Orange. Chang says that this does not, I can't remember the rest of it. Basically, she was trying to say, like, this does not contradict her statements, and that she just kept talking in circles. I mean, like I said, he kept having to admonish her and like tell the judge, like, Judge, she's not answering the questions. And this was another interesting element of the story. Khanna asks EPA witness Chang if she is aware that one of her previous employers, 3M, has been involved with work on fluorinated chemicals, and that now 3M is being sued by the state of Minnesota. And I showed a lawsuit. She's also gone to court defending asbestos, things of that sort. Khanna asked Dr. Chang about her work for Monsanto. She's defended glyphosate. I mean, this lady defended Agent Orange in court, fluoride, asbestos, and glyphosate. And Khanna says, although you found a connection between glyphosate and cancer, you concluded there was not a risk. Chang explains that the, quote, meta-analysis, we found an association. However, it was not statistically significant, according to her. Khanna asks Chang if her work for Monsanto on glyphosate was criticized. Oh, yeah. So he's like, are you aware that your work has been criticized as being agenda-driven? The EPA objects. Khanna rephrases, and Chang admits that there was one peer reviewer out there who found that her analysis, quote, devolved into a laundry list of every possible cause of bias. And so, she was just getting called out left and right. It was pretty cool to see. Khanna mentions that as a result of lawsuits against Monsanto, and this is interesting, I want to find these. You guys know about the lawsuits that have been taking place against Monsanto the last couple of years. So apparently there was open records requests, and the lawyers were able to get access to these emails, and they were released as part of court discovery. And some of these emails show that this witness, Dr. Chang, and Monsanto, that she shared a draft of one of her reports about glyphosate with a toxicologist and 2 consultants who work with Monsanto. So prior to it being released, she was sharing it to them. And that's typically what somebody's going to do when they're saying, hey, does this meet what do you guys like the way this sounds? That sort of thing. And she said, oh, well, I did send it to some people. I don't know. Maybe they work for Monsanto. I'm not sure who these people work for. She was just playing dumb the whole time. It was kind of sad to see an adults like just sit there and can't even be real and be like, all right, well, they're paying me well. I don't know. It's sad. Khanna showing EPA witness Dr. Chang a table of her 10 most relevant studies showing a causal link between fluoride. I have a picture of that too. Khanna to Chang says, do you recognize there is a difference between reliability and relevant? Chang agrees. And so there was also so much discussion. I'm not really getting into this because it's kind of deep in the weeds, but like discussion on what is systematic review versus systematic evaluation, and what is a general view versus a pragmatic review. And it's all just about the approach they take. But to me, it showed that there are so many ways that they can wiggle their way out of this, out of actually taking responsibility and, keeping a chemical that poisons people out of the water. They can be like, well, we did this kind of review. And then they can also, seems like there's so many ways that they can look at a study, and if they don't like it, they can claim that it has this bias or that bias. And of course, trying to control for bias is important, but it seems like there's so many mechanisms, like I said, for them to wiggle their way out of it. EPA witness Dr. Chang's previous statements about the reliability of the Mexico studies. Khanna says, Dr. Chang, do you agree that the Canada, MIRAC, and Mexico element studies are the most rigorous studies? Chang says, yes, I do agree that they are the most rigorous. And that was a big statement because those are the 2 main studies that the Fluoride Action Network is using, the Canadian and the Mexican studies. Judge Chen asks again to witness Chang, do you have any reason to believe bias played a role in these studies? And this was today. He was asking her about the studies, the Mexico and the MIRAC studies, saying like, okay, you agree that these studies are rigorous. Do you have any reason to believe that they're biased? And she said, I don't recall if they considered all confounders, which is, she's saying she doesn't know if they consider all the various forms of bias that could exist. But she did agree that it was a rigorous study. And then we had Dr. Tala Henry get called, and this was the EPA's last witness other than a video deposition that played. This is the last person in person. EPA questioned her throughout the day, but I mean, a lot of it, like I said, was very much like back and forth on systematic review, this kind of review, what's this evaluation, and I tweeted so much, but it's tough to really keep up with that. In your 25 years at the EPA, have you become aware of any reason why the U.S. EPA would want to deny evidence of the harm of fluoride? Dr. Henry says no, the EPA is done. It's like, to me, I'm like, yeah, we all can think about this. This evidence has been known. Maybe some people have their theories about why the EPA is denying it, but there's definitely corruption. Khanna asks witness Dr. Henry, by your own admission, you are not an expert on fluoride, correct? Not an expert on fluoride toxicity, correct? No prior history studying fluoride, correct? So he just was, again, poking holes in Tala Henry, the EPA's last witness, her credibility. Khanna asked Dr. Henry if she remembers stating that she didn't know how a private citizen like Dr. Granjan could submit his study. Henry answers in a circular fashion. Khanna introduces impeachment testimony. EPA attorney Kafra asks for one moment to catch up. And I thought this was funny. I'll explain this. So Dr. Granjan was the strongest witness, the Danish scientist for the Fluoride Action Network. And his study seems to be very robust, and he was involved in this. And apparently in the deposition a while back during this trial, Khanna had asked this Dr. Henry, how could a private citizen like Dr. Granjan, who doesn't work for the U.S. government, he's a Danish citizen and he's done studies at Harvard and elsewhere, how could a private citizen submit a study to the proper people in violation of TASCA and say like, hey, look, we found this evidence. Can you please look at it? And she basically wouldn't give him an answer, apparently. And so he's just grilling her, and the EPA attorney's like, can you give me just one moment so I can catch up? And I thought that was funny because it definitely seemed like she was trying to keep up because Michael Khanna was just drilling into the witness. Khanna introduces impeachment evidence again. And this kept happening. He literally just, after everything that Dr. Henry would say, he was able to prove like, look, here's impeachment evidence of what you said before, and would have her read it and show that she was wrong. So, I mean, the judge was clearly seeing this. He reads Dr. Henry's words from the deposition again. Khanna is seeking to establish that the methods used to find fluoride neurotoxicity are similar to the methods used by the EPA for risk assessment under the Toxic Substance Control Act. So again, he's trying to establish foundation for how the strength of the studies that they had cited with their witnesses. Khanna asked Dr. Henry if she confirms she was one of the primary authors of the plaintiff's petition to the EPA. Henry agrees. Khanna is showing the EPA's response to the petition on screen. So basically, again, this is all being done because the plaintiffs, Fluoride Action Network, Food and Water Watch, etc., filed a petition under, I think, Section 5 or something under the Toxic Substance Control Act. And the EPA turned them down and said, no, you don't have enough evidence. We're going to deny this. And that set off a lawsuit that's been going on for 4 years. Well, this witness that they were presenting, Dr. Henry, was the one who was specifically involved with writing the response and turning them down. So he wanted to bring that point up and make sure that was known. Khanna asked EPA witness Dr. Henry if it is true that the EPA, and this is another big one, that the EPA held the plaintiffs to a burden of proof that the EPA has not held a single chemical before. Dr. Henry says, I guess that's true. The EPA has apparently never before held a chemical to a standard of causation. So in this case, they were trying to basically say like, okay, well, there's these different associations, but we didn't get to prove a causal link, or at least that's what they're claiming. And apparently that's not a standard that they ever take. That Khanna was able to show that they've taken action about other chemicals, or that they study other chemicals, but they don't look only for causation. But in the case of fluoride, in the review of this petition, they held it to a standard that has never been seen before. So it's obviously biased and unfair on their part. The EPA only has to read experts. Okay, so this is for tomorrow. Tomorrow, they're just going to be reading some experts of the deposition. Michael Khanna might rebut for a little while and then potentially call one rebuttal witness. Judge Chen tells both parties to prepare for their closing statements tomorrow. And that's kind of where it ended. Judge Chen was explaining the logistics, and he said that what he'll need for both parties, and the court's going to resume tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Pacific, which is 10:30 Central here in Houston, and I will be live tweeting again. But yeah, I mean, and so what I'm going to do tomorrow is, once the trial wraps up, whatever happens tomorrow, I will be live tweeting. Then I'm going to collect everything I just shared with you guys, and I'm going to turn it into an article of, like I did the other article reviewing of week 1. This will be a review of week 2 and conclusion, and whatever happens. Hopefully the judge can, it's not a jury trial. Like you guys got, it's just the judge it's a federal court in San Francisco. And so hopefully, hopefully the judge goes with the evidence, and I think that it's important for us to see that there is clearly evidence. I've been writing about this for years, and you can search my name, Derrick Broze and Fluoride, and I posted some of this on Facebook the other day. There's so much evidence. I'm going to do another video separately from this because I found an old article I wrote about years ago showing that the CDC and the American Dental Association have known about fluoride causing harm to kidneys and other things for years, and they kept that between themselves, and they talked about how they could kind of keep the press from talking about it too much. And they also discuss how a former mayor, I can't remember his name right now, he was starting to work with Martin Luther King's daughter in Atlanta, and they were starting to realize that, according to them, that water fluoridation and what fluoride does is a civil rights issue, because there have been studies showing that fluoride does disproportionately affect the Black male population, and we don't really know why. But so this civil rights activist, including Martin Luther King's daughter and some other people in Atlanta back in 2015, I want to say, maybe even before that, we're starting to raise awareness about this. And these emails that were released during a lawsuit show that the CDC was talking about it, and they were concerned, and they were like, we need to reach out to local clergy and pastors, and they just want to try to get the influencers and keep people from questioning it. So with everything going on, Black Lives Matter, etc., people need to realize that fluoride does seem to, for one reason or another, affect like not only moms and children, but Black folks typically. I don't know if we've seen, brown people, Mexican, etc., but we do know for sure, and with some studies, that there have been signs that Black males are affected more predominantly than others. And then, of course, as I said, the moms and the children in general. So there's so much that we need to get the public to realize. And if this does go through tomorrow, guys, if this judge does rule in the favor of the people, which I believe he will, I'm confident, I'm hopeful, I'm trying to be optimistic at least, then that's going to be a big thing, but it's definitely not going to be the end. Without a doubt, the EPA will, of course, appeal this. This is probably going to go into court for maybe, months, and who knows, another year or so. And even if then none of that happens, then the judge there's going to be another portion of the trial, and I don't know when they're going to hold this, where the judge will then decide, if he does indeed decide that fluoride should be banned or regulated, where there will be a rulemaking, where they will make decisions on how it actually how it actually is implemented, basically. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there, guys. I wanted to do a shorter video, but it's a lot of information to cover, and I hope you guys appreciate the depth that I try to go with all the topics that I look at. This is the third video I've done today. We looked at mosquitoes and Bill Gates earlier. We looked at George Soros earlier, and I try to take the same approach with all these different topics and show you the various sides of the story. And I quoted from the government scientists as what they claimed, and I quoted from the Fluoride Action Network witnesses. Clearly, I think fluoride is a danger based on my research, but I'm showing both sides of the story. And I think that's what journalism is supposed to be about. And especially when it comes to court cases, like I've said to you guys recently, if there's not somebody like myself in the court or following the court, there are so many details that get missed. Go ahead and do a search. You won't see any articles out there in the mainstream talking about this and saying that a scientist said he was threatened for trying to, talk about fluoride dangers, where they say that, this scientist who's tied to Monsanto and all these companies is trying to testify in court in favor of fluoride. I mean, there's big stories that could be written and explored here if the mainstream would actually do real journalism. But I'm thankful they don't, because that allows somebody like me to just sit here in my house and use the tools that I have and take the support from you guys and do real journalism and ask the hard questions. And I love that. So we can compete with the people out there who've got millions and millions of dollars, and we can do it better than them together. So thank you guys for believing in me and for letting me do this. And I'm going to leave it there for now, guys. I'll be with you tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central. I'll be live tweeting again, and hopefully things go our way. We'll talk tomorrow. We'll do a wrap-up video, whatever happens. So until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, you are free. Peace.